So I'm now joined by Terry Austin, who is an attorney and legal analyst. She was in the courtroom when Diddy's sentencing was handed down. So, Terry, any first reactions to this sentence? Are you surprised, or is it sort of consistent with what you would expect in this case and for these charges?
Well, the first thing I have to say is I think that the judge carefully considered everything that was submitted to him, and he carefully considered all of the arguments today. The defense made sure they left everything on the table. The prosecution obviously made their case. They spoke first. They asked for 11 years and 3 months, and the defense asked for 14 months. The other issue that the judge considered was the PSR. That's the pre-sentencing investigative report. As a matter of fact, there were objections on both sides to some of the considerations in the report. The judge tossed those all aside. He accepted the report as it was, and the report said basically that they're recommending a minimum of 5 years and 10 months and a maximum of 7 years and 3 months. At the end of the day, the judge gave a sentence of 50 months, which equates to 4.2 years. So he gave the lower side of what the PSR recommended. So that's good news for Sean Combs. He did, however, when he gave the sentence, talk about the victims. He wanted to make sure that the victims understood. He understood the severity of these crimes, and it was very important and very courageous of Jane and Cassie to come and tell their story. He said that's critical. The other thing the judge did, and I think this was important, is he said to Sean Combs, you may be feeling defeated right now, you may be feeling down, but this is an opportunity for you to give back, to think about your life, to take care of yourself, to continue doing what he has been doing. And the judge said he considered all that he's been doing in, incarceration. So I think all in all, it's fair. I think obviously the defense was hoping for less. The prosecution was hoping for more. And I think the judge very carefully considered all of the variables in the case.
So what was the reaction that you saw from Diddy, from his legal team, and from some of the victims that were there and their legal teams? Did they register surprise? How did they look when the sentence was read?
I literally had a front row seat, and I might mention that I've been in the courtroom every single day for the past 8 weeks, including the jury selection. So today, we not only heard from most of the defense team, we heard from Agnifilo, Driscoll, we heard from everyone who really wanted to say something, Nicole Westmoreland, and they gave some moving speeches. They talked about the fact that he's been on really good behavior when he's been inside the jail at MDC. They talked about the class that he's giving and the impact that the class has had on all of the inmates. There were multiple letters that were submitted to the judge. He read all of those letters. So I think they worked really hard at making sure they covered all their bases. We heard also from all of the children, and they got up and they gave really impactful statements. As a matter of fact, it was emotional, it was moving, it brought people to tears, including myself, because you recognize the fact that it's not just Sean Combs who is behind bars, it's his children who are also impacted. And I think their statements were really resonating with the entire courtroom. They were all crying, essentially, and the judge was listening, and the judge thanked them profusely. He said he greatly appreciated the fact that they were brave enough to come up and to tell what impact this has had on their lives. So it was a very full day, it was a very comprehensive day, and it was a very emotional day.
Do you think specifically that the video that the defense released, sort of trying to humanize Sean Combs, actually had an effect on the sentencing and sort of had an influence on the judge one way or another?
I think the video did have some impact. Oftentimes the judge has already made up his or her mind, and he's already, in this case, read all of the papers. So I think he knew already he was going to come in a little bit under that PSR. And he knew already about what Sean Combs did in his life. He knew he gave back to the community. He knew he was a father. But I do think the video put it all together. Now, of course, it is a produced video. It is something that the team put together. But I do think that the judge looked at it and considered it when he made his final decision. And even though he probably read the papers and knew what direction he was going to go in, I think the video, the children speaking, all of that solidified where he came out. Frankly, it could have been much, much worse. He could have done what the prosecution was asking for, 11 years. That's a long time. And he came in under the PSR. So even though it's a disappointment to the defense, I think it's a reasonable place to end up.
And do you think that the fact that it came under that level means that the victims will feel like justice was served, or do you think that they will be left hoping or wanting more?
You know, you have a good decision when everybody is upset. I do think the victims will probably wish it had been a greater sentence, but of course the defense and the defense's family, I do think they wished that it had been much less. So the 4.2 is somewhere in the middle. It's not the 11 years that the prosecution asked for. It's not the exact amount of time that the PSR mandated or recommended, but I think that it is a very reasonable, very thought out decision by the judge. And even though the victims might feel as though it's not enough, the words the judge said, I think, were powerful and will have an impact on the victims. And I think that's why he did that. I think he's trying to say to both sides, look, this was not easy. And as far as the victims are concerned, you are brave women. He said that you have enabled other women to come up and to state what happened to them behind closed doors. So he spoke to them personally. He called them by name. Even if they may not agree with the sentence, he made sure that he told them how he felt and how important it was that they came forward.
So Diddy still faces dozens of civil lawsuits. This is not the last time we'll see him in court. Can you explain a little bit about what those civil suits are about? And in your opinion, do you think that the sentencing today will have any bearing on those suits?
So he does face dozens of lawsuits, and that was mentioned by the defense. One of the things that the defense was trying to argue is you don't have to give him more time, Your Honor, because all of these other things have deterred him. He is not going to do this again. He's facing civil suits. He's facing loss of his businesses. But the civil suits, I believe, are going to go forward. I think he's behind bars now for quite some time. They are trying to say that they need some damages paid to them because they've been harmed. One of the civil suits is by Deontay Nash, who was one of the stylists, I believe, who was involved. And, you know, he's stating that he was in an altercation and that Combs was abusive to him. And so he's asking for money damages. The judge did state that Combs has to pay $500,000, and that's no small amount. That was the fine. So whatever he's already spent on defense fees, he now has to pay a $500,000 fine, and he'll have to pay whatever judgments he gets in these civil actions, or if he determines a settlement is in order, he'll have to pay that. So I think all in all, he has faced both civil and criminal ramifications from his actions. He actually spoke today. He was the last person to speak. And he said, I have reached the lowest low. I am remorseful. Despite what the government says, I am very sorry and I take full accountability for my actions. And he mentioned he's lost everything. He's lost time with his family. He's lost his businesses. So I do think that the impact of everything, including the civil suits against him, has taken its toll.
So do you think that the outcome, the ultimate outcome of this case will also have a bearing on whether similar cases in the future are brought by prosecutors if prosecutors decide to prosecute rather than settle, for example. Do you think this is encouraging for future prosecutors? Do you think it's discouraging? How do you view things going forward in similar cases?
I think prosecutors in the future are going to think about the type of charges they bring. So, for instance, they brought the RICO conspiracy. The jury said no and acquitted him on that charge. They brought a charge for sex trafficking. The jury said no. There was no force, fraud, and coercion as far as sex trafficking is concerned. So I think the prosecutors in the Southern District are going to think twice before they bring those types of charges. The Mann Act, the jury said yes, you are guilty on 2 counts as it relates to Jane, as it relates to Cassie. And I believe that in the future, not only will prosecutors think about what charges should they bring, but I think, and the judge mentioned this, people are going to think about how they treat women. People are going to think about what they can and cannot do. This case is serving as an example, the judge said, and that's why he thought that it should be a significant punishment. And to the judge, the 4.2, the 50 months, is a significant punishment.
All right, well, thank you so much, Terry Austin. That was attorney and legal analyst Terry Austin. Thanks so much for sharing your insights and what you observed in the courtroom today.